Welcome back.
Hello.
Hope everyone's having a great day.
I'm having a good day.
I am too.
You cool?
I'm cool, man.
Are we? Is this even, bro?
It looks pretty even.
I hope they're having a good day. Fuck them. We'll be fine.
We'll be all right. It's season 3, the first 2 episodes, right out the gate came swinging.
I thought about you because I was like, bro, this is going to be... The dude loves 3. And there's 2 3s in this one today. What'd you got for this one? I noticed that I usually ask you, so I'm just going to jump in and ask
33, obviously, it's the highest level of masonry.
Okay. I thought you were going to go with the OJC, the JC one, but...
Jesus Christ was 33 when he was crucified. Club 33
Allegedly.
at Disneyland. You ever heard of Club 33?
I have. I didn't know it was, that's what it was called.
I think it's Club 33, correct? We have a Disney professional in here that I had to...
Is it? It is?
Yeah, I had to confirm.
No hesitation.
Well,
Yeah,
it's because
that's what it is.
Walt Disney was a Mason. So it's kind
That's
of like
cool.
it represents that. We could do a whole episode on Masons if we wanted to.
That'd be pretty tight.
Maybe we will. I've done a couple
Pretty
little things
interesting.
here and there about them.
It's super interesting.
Yeah.
There's a lot of elements to
Damn,
it.
you upgraded quick. It was
I
interesting.
realized I didn't give
Super
it enough.
inter-
I didn't give it enough. It is
Yeah.
very interesting.
And it's around that time of year. It's going to be Christmas soon. Depending on what you celebrate. I think the majority of people in the United States are going to do some sort of a Christmas celebration. Am I wrong?
I think you're right. I mean, I obviously have no interest in any of the actual stuff, and I still got a fucking tree over there. So
You got it.
it's fun. I don't fucking know. It's fun.
And that ties in to the video today. So the video we're going to be doing, it does.
Oh,
It
shit, I know what
actually-
we're talking about.
It actually
All right.
does.
All right.
So we're going to be talking about psychedelics.
Nice.
The history, why they're illegal, how some of them were discovered. But what I want to start off with first is, have you heard, I'm guessing you haven't, the idea that Santa Claus actually is a Siberian tale of shamans that are giving mushrooms to people?
No, I haven't heard that particular one, but I have heard that a lot. There isn't just like one. I think that like what we celebrate comes from like the Netherlands. I think that's where the origins of our Santa Claus, or the one that we know, would be from. But there's tons of Santa Claus type tales from back in the way. I thought that was interesting. I didn't know that. I thought there was just the one thing.
Now that there's...
You live and you learn.
Well, I did a video a while back about something called Yule, which is like the celebration of the winter solstice. On December 21st, winter solstice starts. People celebrate it. The whole idea was the sun basically only stays at a certain point on the horizon.
It's the lowest that it goes on the horizon, so they would assume that the sun was dead. It's all astronomical.
Then it rises for 3 days, and it goes back on the trajectory.
On the crux in the sky. They
Is
say a
that
lot of
it?
that was basically the Christianity thing, or well, actually a lot of religions
It's
have
sun
used
gods.
the idea behind the solstice. The solstice thing is interesting. The winter and the summer solstice, and the fact that so many different periods of time have still considered that to be a thing. I know that wasn't a very profound sense, but if you go very far back,
Depends on how much you thought
they
about
would
it.
build they say the what is it,
Pyramids?
Stonehenge, and shit like that. Well, yeah, all these things are facing a certain way. For that one time a year, it'll be right on the money. But yeah, the pyramids too.
I think if you look down at the pyramids, they have 8 sides only visible during the spring solstice. For one day, when the sun's in a certain point of the sky, you see concaves on the sides that create 8 sides of the pyramids.
I haven't seen anything.
I haven't
about that.
seen it in
I
real
just know
life.
it's. They said it was based off like Orion's belt. It has the same
Yeah, because
geographical elements.
and that's kind of how they've also dated when it was built, because where Orion's belt was. So, Santa Claus. Why are people saying it's related to mushrooms?
You tell me, bro.
I'm gonna hit you with some ideas.
I feel like you didn't even want me to answer, and you just had it.
I didn't.
Hit me with it, bro.
Like what Mitch Hedberg's joke. I love when people say, "Hey, guess what?" And then they tell me right away. It's like, man, you didn't even give me a
You
chance
didn't
to
let me
try.
guess. I might have had it.
Let me tell you.
Do it.
So think about there's a few similarities here that we'll dive into. So basically, in Siberia, there's these mushrooms that grow underneath pine trees called Amanita Mascaras. They're the
Bro,
large...
you spent time on that one, huh?
What?
You're like, I can't say this shit wrong on camera.
Oh,
You spent a little bit of time making sure. I would have.
I've
Animatronic,
they're actually
it could
legal.
have been a bunch of
I
things.
did a bunch of research about them in the past,
Okay.
I said it wrong 40 times before I said it right.
That's what I'm saying. You
Now
gotta
I got
dust
it.
off the
Amanita Mascara. You know what I mean? I
Nice.
got it on lock now, right?
I'm gonna try that off camera.
So Amanita Mascaras are the mushrooms that most people are familiar with. They're red with the white spots. They're the Mario
The
mushrooms.
classic, yeah.
The classic mushrooms, right? So these mushrooms have a synergistic vibe with pine trees. So they grow
Okay.
at the base of pine trees. So that's one thing. So pine trees, Christmas trees. I'm gonna hit you with like the facts. I'm gonna tie it all together. Okay. If I just said that, that wouldn't be enough. So
I agree.
during the winter solstice, what would happen is people would ingest these mushrooms. They would make teas out of them, things of that nature, and they would have profound experiences. So shamans, which are religious teachers, which actually originated in Siberia, what they would do is during the winter solstice, they would pick a bunch of these and forage for these mushrooms, and they would gift them to the community. This is
Okay.
the thing. It was snowing in Siberia. Siberia, by the way, is pretty much the North Pole. You know, the North Pole, and essentially they were snowed in the houses, so the shamans would have to go on the rooftop and they'd have to drop the Amanita Mascaras down the chimney in order for people to receive them. So
Okay.
another thing.
Is this myth or is this
No,
based
this,
on
this is all true. This is all true.
Okay.
So another tidbit is there's reindeers involved in the traditional story of Santa Claus. So up in Siberia, they have a lot of caribou, which are reindeers, and they're addicted to these things, man. To the point they'll eat them all day, and because their bladder passes it and it filters it out, if you were just to eat the Amanita Mascara, it could be poisonous to you. So that's what you got to boil it, make it into a tea, make it into a wine. You have to go through a process in order to digest it.
Man, that'd be a trip. Mushroom wine.
Yeah, they make it. It's
That's
real
what's up.
and it's legal. So
Still
yeah, well that you could buy it. There's like I think
there, not here, right?
no, you can buy it in the United States.
In the States?
There's
Okay.
one called the Washington Amanita Mascara that's supposed to be like the best, and you can get like an ounce of
Amanita Mascara?
Amanita Mascara
Amanita Mascara?
for like $30. You could buy an ounce of it.
Does
online.
it do anything online? Does it
Well,
do
you
it-
got to
does it
eat
do
a
it?
lot. It's not like a traditional golden teacher or something where you eat like 3 grams for blast off. You got to take in a
30
lot more.
seconds to Mars, bro.
Yeah, bro.
Well, like 30 minutes.
Fucking 30
30
45 minutes.
About 45 minutes to Mars, Doc.
Depending on what's in your stomach that day. So the caribou are obsessed with this Amanita Mascara. They eat it all day, and that would probably make their noses red.
Hey-o.
Rudolph, they fly. You know, the reindeers are flying in the story. Santa's flying. So the idea is, or back to what I was getting at though. So the caribou eat them and process them and digest them, and people, the shamans would actually get piss from these caribous and drink it because it filters down the Amanita Mascara into what they're looking for, and that's how they would get lit. They'd actually drink their own pee as well. They'd eat it and drink their own pee. So that has nothing to do with the whole Santa Claus thing.
That's a little bit rough,
But
dude. Just for a trip?
Hey man,
Just for a trip?
I haven't experienced a trip. It might be worth it. I don't know. I don't think I drink my own
Worth it?
piss. You know,
Just
someone else's
just-
piss, maybe an animal's piss, possibly. If I was out with a group of the guys, you know, and it's like, hey, dude,
bro.
we're gonna go out and drink this reindeer piss.
I like how you're
I'd
going
be
out with the
intrigued.
guys. That's not a date night. That's not with the wife. That's with the guys.
I'd be intrigued. You know what I
Hey,
mean,
fellas.
I don't know if my wife would drink reindeer piss.
Nah, probably
maybe,
not.
maybe not. I don't know.
I don't-
So the similarities here are you have Santa. The colors are red and white. Basically derived from this Amanita Mascara, this red and white. They grow underneath pine trees. We put Christmases that are red and white underneath pine trees. The shamans would deliver them via chimney. That's another thing. Santa comes down
So
the chimney.
you're saying it sparked most of this
Yeah,
in
so
that respect.
the Siberians didn't want the Romans and all these other people to understand what they were trying to put down in the text, so they would gimmick it a little bit. You know what I mean? So instead of saying,
Like, give me an example.
well, instead of saying that we eat these mushrooms and blast off and we drink deer piss and all this stuff, they made the story of this mythical guy that drops things down chimneys as presents. You know, the trees in your house with presents underneath them. So it was all just alluding to the fact that these mushrooms possess this magical power.
Gotcha.
So
Okay.
they would try to mask the truth within these parables and whatnot. You know
Gotcha.
what I mean? So what do you think?
I think that all of it is a variable. I do know that at least with the traditions that, I wouldn't say value, but the idea of the whole Christmas bit with Santa Claus and all that story in general. Again, I was saying ours, what we recognize it from, comes from the Netherlands. That story, but at the same time, there are tons of this same idea globally. So who's to say they didn't come together in a way? But I know that a lot of the attributes, like the reindeer, like originally, the Netherlands Santa Claus that we now talk about, Santa Claus was like Sinterklaas or something like that, and or some shit. But he would go without the reindeer, and then eventually a poem wrote that he had reindeer. So that's where the reindeer came from. And another poem added that, because originally he was a bachelor, but some poem mentioned that he had like a wife. So then he had a wife. And they contribute the Coca-Cola.
Like the 1500s?
Well, it started over there, and as North America started to colonize, certain people would come over from different areas, and their myths would come together, and that was one myth that was adopted, so to say, from them. But there's again several different versions, and if this is a melting pot of societies, who's to say that these similar type of characters didn't bleed into each other, so to say?
Yeah, this one comes from, there's a book called The Sacred Mushroom and the Cross, and it basically goes into about how Christianity and other religions are derived stories and parables based off of psychedelic experiences, masked in parable within the Bible and things of that nature. And it was actually bought by the Catholic Church and deaded. They're like, "No, you can't sell this book." So they bought it. They didn't allow it to be published, and then 25 years later, because it's public domain, it's been published since. I think it's John Allegro is the person who wrote it. But that's where you can find this story. It also refers to mushrooms as God's sons, because when it rains, it's like God ejaculating on the earth. And then after it rains, you get these mushrooms that appear for like 3 to 4 days, and then they go back into the earth.
Bro, that sounds like some lyrics from like a Grateful Dead song.
Hey, dude, hey, man. Actually, the Grateful Dead's going to circle back into the conversation a little bit here. But
Nice.
so that's the Christmas aspect. So was Santa really just a story about a mushroom that was magical? You be the judge.
Totally
I
fucking,
like it.
totally possible.
That's what I'm going to tell my kids. You know what I mean?
Like 4 years old. So they would get the deer.
Hey, so this is the mushroom. We're going to drink it. No.
Deer piss.
Yeah. God ejaculated all over the earth.
Heavy, dude. Super heavy. Does that hurt you a little bit to say?
What?
It just sounds fun. I've never heard that sentence.
God ejaculated all over the earth?
Yeah.
It's, I was going to say a different term, but I wanted to keep it scientific, bro. You know what I'm saying? Like, I didn't want to get too slurish with the vocab. But there's gross ways of saying it.
I'm cool with it.
Yeah,
I was
man.
just, I was just asking you.
All right, so let's get back a little bit into history, where some of these things started. So when it comes to globally, mushrooms, not LSD. LSD, we'll get into how that was created, when, and all that. But mushrooms go back thousands of years. In the Egyptian hieroglyphs, you can actually see images of mushrooms. They have like a sacred sign that is seen in a lot of cultures where it looks like a cross with a head on it. Have you seen that?
Mm-hmm.
Like the Olmec, I believe is what it's called. But that's even been talked about as being possibly a mushroom, because in a lot of the images, it looks like people are about to eat it. They're feeding it to Osiris.
And didn't they call it life? It was like the symbol for life or something. Like I'm sure they had different words for these symbols, more than one, I should say. But that would be interesting if that does tie in that it was life, and it's a mushroom.
That sounds about right. Mushrooms have been here forever. Yeah, I think we did a video before about the Stargate theory.
It's like the first. It's like one of the first things on the planet. And we derive from it.
I actually recently had an experience with some mushrooms, and the guy I was with started making me believe maybe mushrooms are the ultimate creators, and they couldn't do enough from the ground, so they had to create another form of fungus that could actually do things like build bigger houses, things like
us.
Like we're descendants, which we are, but it was tripping me the fuck out.
Watch that video. What was the stoned ape one? What did we label it?
The DMT and the stoned ape. We talked about.
So if you
DMT.
watch that one, that explains a little bit of what we're talking about now.
Yeah. So I never put so much together in my head about us being fungus, but yeah, it was pretty intense. So it goes back thousands and thousands of years. It's been used by shamans. It's been used in a lot of cultures. The way that America actually got hip to it, North America that is in 1958, there was a gentleman that went to Mexico because he
Oh,
heard
that
about
Time article.
the Time article. There you go.
Yeah,
So
that's crazy how that
it was the vice
started that over
president
here.
of Chase Banks, actually.
Oh yeah.
He went down to Oaxaca, Mexico, because he heard people were having these mystical experiences, and he wanted to see it for himself. So he went down there. He had one, and then that's kind of when the pop culture, like you said, in life, really came full circle. People
Was
started
it Life
getting
or was it
interested in.
Time?
Or I'm sorry, Time.
It was.
I was
I'm
Life.
not trying to call you. I was just asking.
Oh no, I was
thinking Life.
I'm still thinking about that symbol, man.
But
So-
yeah, the Time article. That's crazy that's what blew it up over here. People started to read that and think like, fuck. And that's like around when LSD was blowing up too.
It was like a cover story. I think it was
Yeah.
the thing.
It was the cover story.
the thing that grows that enhances man mind or something like
Something
that.
like that.
And then it was like 17 pages. So it got a lot of notoriety. And at this time, remind you, it was perfectly legal. There was no illegalities around it. Psychedelics and all that stuff were good. By that time, LSD was already being researched very heavily. So
Super heavily. It's crazy that they shut that down.
yeah, so the way that happened, and maybe you know too, but in 1943, Albert Hofmann.
Oh, the guy who
I would
invented
just say Hoffman. You know
it
what
was
I mean?
LSD 25, right?
LSD 25. So he was in a Swedish laboratory, and he was doing research on a mold that grows on wheat.
Right.
It's the same wheat that's been attributed to things like the Salem witch trials.
Mhm.
They say that this mold was on the wheat and the bread that they were eating in Oregon, and these people were eating it and tripping out, and they thought witches existed, and a bunch of people got murdered because they were just baked out. They didn't know how to deal with it. You know what I mean?
Trip, dude.
They needed a shaman.
Trip.
With
They
the
didn't, well,
shaman, that
they
wouldn't have
needed
happened.
Google.
They needed a guru. You know what I mean? Not a fake one. No. So yeah,
Hey.
they needed a shaman or
Maybe.
something to help them out.
Right.
They were misguided, if anything at all. They were not.
Well, that's the thing. Slightly going back to the in Mexico with the mushrooms, when they would take this mushroom, it was somewhat of a rite of passage, and it was a spiritual experience that would guide you in the mind and elevate you. But there was the big thing is they would always have I don't know what the word. I don't want to say shaman, maybe teacher, but they would have someone who would guide your trip to make sure you had an elevated trip and then it did something to enhance your mind. It wasn't just, they were just tripping, that's cool too. But this person would help you actually have like a spiritual experience. And that's kind of what made it so interesting in the pop culture era, because they were doing the acid thing.
Exactly.
Go back to acid 25 or LSD 25.
I'm pretty sure they're just shamans.
I don't know.
Tour spirit guides.
Didn't they have? Well, I thought they had a specific name. I wasn't just trying to.
I don't.
I could be wrong. I don't know. I thought they had a specific.
Because I've only heard about the word shaman, but so yeah. So this guy Albert, he was researching this mold, and he had put it on the back burner for like a few weeks. He went back to it. It was the LSD 25. He got a little bit of it on his fingers, and then he like touched his eye a little bit with it. And then 30 minutes later, he realized, oh shit, this is like a psychotropic
It's doing something.
experience that I'm having. So he came in at a later point, with whether it be a day or a week, I'm not exactly
he
sure.
thought that this could be something that would benefit mankind.
Yeah, so
that's why he went back to it later.
So he dosed himself.
Yes.
So he took a large dose of it.
He took. Okay, so like if you were to take this is gonna be hard to explain, but if you took a hit of like, let's say, a joint, that's one. It's such a small amount that you're actually taking, and he took, I forget, it was like 3% of what a hit of a joint would be. I don't know the exact numbers, but it's something like that.
He
Like
took
it was so small.
250 micrograms.
Yeah, he thought that this would be
And
like nothing.
These days, if you're tripping on acid, usually you're doing between 60 to 90 U's. You know,
He
60
did
to
double,
90
right? He
60
did double what a trip
more
should
than
be.
that. He did like 4 times the minimal trip.
Oh, okay.
So he did 250 of these micrograms, and not knowing that it was going to be this profound, thought he had died, had this crazy experience, and then he was in his lab, and he actually had his lab tech ride him home. But during the time they were in the war,
He rode the bike.
so they had to ride a bike, dude. So
He
this
rode
guy-
the bike, and that's why we have Bike Day today. Did you know that?
Yeah, I think it's either the 19th or the 21st.
It's the
of
19th.
April.
Yeah.
So every 19th,
Isn't that crazy?
there's an infamous bike trip that we reenact, and it's because Albert Hofmann created this molecule, this LSD 25, took this bike ride, and then after that, what they wanted to do is they weren't exactly sure on how they could, I guess, monetize it and get it out there and have it be something that was practiced with. So they just open sourced it. They basically offered anybody that wanted it. If you got a doctor's office and you're doing any kind of studies, they would send you
They would
large
give them
batches of
tons,
it.
yeah, tons.
Shitloads
Isn't
of
that a
this
trip?
stuff. That'd be cool.
You get it?
Yeah,
Isn't that a
be
trip?
be a
But yeah,
super trip.
they were sourcing it immensely, and they were finding it to be very beneficial on damn near everything that they tried to use it for: depression, substance abuse, all sorts of things, and it worked every time. It was like 100% effective or something like that. It was something crazy.
I don't know if you could say 100%,
99,
but very close, very close.
It was very high. It was. Wasn't it for cigarettes? It was the highest.
I think for
it was the most successful, not like quit cigarette thing.
I don't know this.
Man, that was a terrible sentence.
I don't know. I don't know this.
You know what I meant, though.
I don't know the statistics behind the LSD research that they did in regards to cigarettes. A little bit later, I'll go over like the statistics with psilocybin, which is an active ingredient in mushrooms. I don't know about the LSD results, but just to kind of bring it all in. So Albert Hoffman created this molecule. It was a trip. And then they were giving it to all these like psychotherapists, doctors, and they were finding out that in therapy, it would pretty much diminish your inhibitions to want to hold anything back. It would open up, it would cause openness. So you would get like 10 years of therapy done within a few sessions because you wouldn't hold anything back. You would really talk. You would be able to tap in your subconscious a lot better because most people, when they have issues, they suppress them. And this was a drug that allowed them to unsuppress and really bring things to the fore. I almost said foreskin, dude. Really bring things
right to the tip of the foreskin.
Right to the tip of it, bro. So yeah, it would bring things to the forefront of their subconscious, and they could talk about it better. So it did a lot of beneficial things for people, like you said. People, they were researching it for addiction, for depression, for all these things. And what happened is in the '60s, it broke away from the labs and it broke away from the controlled environments. And people started getting into it. Like regular people could just access this. And there was clandestine labs that were producing it. And that's kind of when the hippie movement started. And the big father of this would be Timothy Leary.
The tune in, turn on,
turn on, tune in, drop out.
Yeah, there you go. There you go.
So Timothy Leary was actually a psychologist that was a professor at Harvard. And he had a psilocybin experience in Mexico. And it just blew his ass out of his mind. You know what I'm saying? Just blew him apart, man.
Graphic.
He didn't know what to do with it. Very graphic.
Nice.
So he wanted to dedicate a lot of time into the studies. So he started the psilocybin project at Harvard. He then did a few classes on it. And then
he was it's the biggest advocate for its benefits.
Huge advocate, but kind of on a professional level where it was done through the school system. And then one of his partners ended up giving some acid to some kids on college on the campus. And that got them fired for whatever reason. And that's when Timothy Leary turned into this advocate. He was a psychedelic evangelist.
Didn't the president come in and he was just like, this is all bullshit, and he labeled it a Schedule 1 drug and all this shit, and that's why he was like, fuck that.
Yeah, so you chopped the story. Yeah, you just came in and kind of chopped the story down. Yeah, it was coming to this.
I thought we skipped it.
No, we didn't.
I thought it was skipped.
This was in the early 60s.
We didn't pre-discuss this. We're just throwing facts.
Sorry, now you know it's not pre-discussed. They know it's off the cusp. You know what I'm saying? So, yeah. So that did end up happening. But in the 60s, he led the whole evangelistic movement of everybody should do acid. He felt like this is something that the whole world could benefit from. That's why you can see videos of him with like the crazy color background preaching to people about the benefits. The hippie movement started. And then what happened is the government got a hold of it and started using it in all these crazy ways. Like they were trying to give it to like leaders of other countries that have them do dumb shit. They were trying to that's trying to use it
trying to catch them up.
They were weaponizing it essentially. And the danger of telling all these kids, all these people growing up, that society is a sham. You need to drop out and you need to do acid and you need to experience what life is really about. The government was like, nah, we're not too into that. So they actually put it on the Schedule 1 list as an addictive and dangerous drug.
And it's not.
Both of which it's not. So it was like the first scheduling of a drug based on complete non-scientific fact. So now it wasn't dangerous. It wasn't addictive. If anything, it was quite the opposite.
It's not that it's counter-addictive, but it helps you with addiction. Isn't that the interesting thing?
Yeah, so only because we don't have too much time.
We could part to it.
We could part to it. I think we could part one. We could partake into part one.
Let's partake part one.
Parfait, yogurt, McDonald's. So
Why McDonald's?
I don't know,
For
bro.
yogurt?
It was a stream of consciousness thing. I was just
Yogurt to
It
McDonald's?
was a little
God damn
beat
it.
comedy poetry jam. So
Sweet.
so Johns Hopkins University, they started doing studies in 1999. A group of people in Silicon Valley funded it. They wanted there because they were all microdosing up there. Microdosing, by the way, is when you take a dose of mushrooms to have any kind of blast off at all, depending on the person.
Even a minor thing, right?
Is around a gram. I mean, a gram would make you feel funny. You're not going to visualize anything. 2 grams, maybe you start. 3.5 grams though is like the threshold.
And the idea
most
for
people.
that is to just open up because when you're on these types of hallucinogens, usually your brain has specific ways that it sends the information, and when you do it, even on a microdose, it opens it up, and as opposed to it just going here or just going there, they all can start to communicate with each other. So you have your mind opens up a little bit more, whether you're tripping or you just have a little bit. So they feel like the best analogy I heard for it is if you have these tracks, like I saw this thing where it was saying like, say you're taking a sled down a hill, a snow hill, and it'll keep going down the same track because it's created that groove, that divot in the snow. But even micro dosing puts snow on the track so you can find new ways to access information or have your brain communicate with parts that it usually wouldn't.
Yeah, it connects the neurons in your brain. And that's one of the things they discovered initially with LSD is it was connecting neurons in the brain that helped them communicate, which they normally wouldn't. So, but it's the psilocybin research that they've done at Johns Hopkins, 85% of people that smoke have quit after one heroic dose, which is like
Heroic dose.
5 grams or so. That's called the hero journey. Terrence McKenna coined the phrase. And then 80% of people that were terminally ill, depressed, things of that nature, were able to have a completely different outlook on life even after like 12 months of the experience. And a lot of these people say that the experience of a mystical trip, not just like you see some cool shit, having like a full-blown mystical trip, is amongst the top 3 experiences of their life. It's up there with having a kid for people.
Yeah. Most people that do any hallucinogens say it's one of the most moving things that they've experienced.
Yeah,
it's pretty interesting, and that they feel more connected.
Yeah, exactly. Like they normally wouldn't.
Weird.
Like their neurons, bro. So that's a little bit of history. Obviously, we wanted to make it, or I wanted a holiday theme a little bit. So is Santa a mushroom? I don't know. I believe so. Why not? I believe that to be the case. So why wouldn't it be? So as far as my stance, like Denver and Oakland, I believe, are the only 2 cities right now that have decriminalized hallucinogens. I want to say Oakland, everything's cool. Like ayahuasca, DMT, mescaline.
It's not that everything's cool, but they're not gonna. They're not gonna
arrest you for it. Yeah. I mean, you can't just open up a shop and sell it to people. But if you have a shitload
just
of it in your car, they're not gonna do anything about it. You got a shitload in your
box?
car. You got
they're
boxes.
letting you go.
Yeah, man, because they have no funding. They took away the funding to be able to even persecute and prosecute for those kind of things. So hopefully the rest of the country takes note, and at some point we can actually have these things on an open market where they could be regulated. I mean, it's super easy to grow it yourself.
It should just be researched more. I mean, fuck, we're just a couple of just random dudes, and we're able to look up enough stuff to see that this isn't that bad of a thing.
Yeah, no, you know what I'm saying? I've never talked to anybody that wasn't open to it. I mean, there's a taboo, of course, that I think is being lifted through all the research.
If there's a taboo because you're told there's a taboo. Sheep, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's weird when people just accept whatever they're told. As I always say, you should ask some questions.
Always ask questions.
Just learn a little bit.
Learn a lot of it.
Totally.
Since you're a super little kid, man, you got to start learning.
Super little.
But that's been episode 33.
It's
Psychedelics. That was it. Psychedelics.
Or was it?
It was.
It is.
Are we just?
It always will be. Because shit'll be online.
It will be. That's how the internet works. It's a forever thing.
It'll be shit, dude. That's crazy.
Until something else comes up. Brain scans.
Well, this has been a good one.
It has been. We could have probably talked more, but fuck it. Let's just end it.
We're just gonna bump it out. Are you ready?